What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Monday, August 17th, 2020, getting through the month here. Over in Iraq, rockets have fallen inside the Taji camp housing U.S.-led coalition troops. At least two unguided rockets fell inside Iraq's Taji military base that houses U.S. troops. No information on damage or potential casualties was immediately available. Now, this camp, Taji, is located 17 miles north of the Iraqi capital, came under rocket fire late on Saturday. At least two projectiles fell inside the base, according to Iraqi military. And there's been a major exchange of fire between U.S. and Syrian armies, resulting in casualties. Remember when we were being told that the U.S. was in Syria to help Syria against the terrorists? Well, I guess that propaganda is no longer operative. But Trump's secure the oil policy in Syria is going to get increasingly costly as tensions rise and more such confrontations inevitably occur. On Monday, U.S. occupying forces and the Syrian army exchanged fire in a rare direct clash, reportedly ending in casualties on the Syrian government side. It happened in northeast Hasaka province, just southeast of Qimshili, in an area where for the past couple of years American special forces have bolstered Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. The Associated Press writes of the rare but not without precedent deadly encounter. So we're actually shooting up the Syrian people now. So let's talk about what happened last Friday in the Security Council. The United States went on into the Security Council with a resolution aiming at an indefinite extension of the UN's arms embargo on Iran. Only two countries voted for it, the Dominican Republic and the United States. 11 abstained. Russia and China voted against it. They didn't need to use their vetoes. The fact of the matter is that the United States has been demonstrated it's no longer the leader of the free world. In fact, from the point of view of the Trump administration, it was an absolute humiliation. So I'm expecting the United States to throw some kind of a tantrum because they didn't get what they wanted here. And they needed 8 votes. They only got 2. Failed 13-2. No veto necessary. Now, Trump has announced he's planning a snapback of the sanctions on Iran. This is from Israel National News. In other words, even though the Security Council has said no to increasing sanctions or a permanent arms embargo, the United States is moving ahead with it. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Saturday he will try a snapback to force a return of U.S. sanctions against Iran after the Security Council rejected Washington's bid to extend the arms embargo against the Islamic Republic. Trump said we're doing a snapback and says that the U.S. remains a participant in the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, despite Trump's withdrawal from it, and therefore can force a return to sanctions if it sees Iran as being in violation of its terms. Donald, if at first you don't succeed, quit. No use looking like a fool here. So what he's basically saying here is, okay, that even though Trump unilaterally withdrew from the P5+1 JCPOA deal, that he still sees himself as a participant in it and is therefore going to force all of the other members who signed the P5+1 deal to continue the sanctions. I think he's going to fail for the same reason he failed at the Security Council. We're seeing the United States empire in decline. We don't have the influence over the rest of the world that we used to have. I think the rest of the world is absolutely sick and tired of the U.S. hegemonic domination. The president said the U.S. will make its move next week sometime, which I presume means this week. And so it was basically the U.S. resolution at the Security Council got routed. It was absolutely routed. Meanwhile, we have the story about the 4 oil tankers that were heading to Venezuela and are now headed to Houston. There are 4 tankers full of refined fuels, and Trump said Iran is not supposed to be doing that, and so we did. We seized the tankers. We're moving them to Houston. It's not clear exactly how the shipment was seized, with U.S. sanctions on Venezuela targeting the maritime industry. It's possible the ship owners were threatened with the loss of registration or insurance, which could have been enough for them to comply and sail to a U.S. port. There was no military intervention. It doesn't matter if there was a military intervention or not. Whatever, regardless of the means of coercion, I view this as an act of piracy on the high seas. I really, really do. And a lot of people are still talking about this new deal to normalize relations between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. And already Israel is hemming and hawing at some of the terms of the deal regarding sovereignty of the West Bank. But for most of the Arab world, they're viewing this as a very, very negative thing because it's putting the stamp of approval of the United Arab Emirates on Israel's treatment of the Palestinian people. So a lot of people are viewing it as a betrayal. Okay. Got a message here from somebody. Okay. So a lot of people are very unhappy with this, even within Israel itself. Thousands of demonstrators have flooded the streets of Jerusalem calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over allegations of corruption, his mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic, and this diplomatic deal with the United Arab Emirates, which is not viewed as a positive thing. Iran is lashing out at the USA, UAE, and Israel, saying that you've brought upon you a dangerous, dangerous future. Iran's Revolutionary Guard warned on Saturday there will be dangerous consequences for the United Arab Emirates for announcing an historic agreement with Israel to establish diplomatic relations. The UAE is the first Arab Gulf state to do so and only the third Arab nation to establish normalized relations with Israel. The Iranian Guard describes the agreement as a shameful pact and a nefarious action approved by the United States, according to a statement from the group posted on the Safa news portal. All righty, now let's take a look. Since everybody's gearing up for a new war, let's see what the realities are going to be once we're out there in the field. Everybody knows that, you know, arms manufacturers, they'll do demos with whatever it is they're demoing, and they can make it look really, really good. But the reality is that along with the decline in political power and global influence, the United States' ability to manufacture reliable, cost-effective weapons is also in decline. And apparently, the latest Russian fighter jet blows America's away. Built to be the deadliest hunter-killer aircraft of all time, the F-35 has quite literally become the hunted. In every scenario that the F-35 has been war-gamed against Sukhoi 30 flankers, the Russian aircraft have emerged the winners. America's newest stealth aircraft, costing $191 million each, is riddled with such critical design flaws that it's likely to get blown away in a shootout with the super maneuverable Sukhois. Stubby wings that reduce lift and maneuverability, a bulbous fuselage that makes it less aerodynamic, low speed, and a super hot engine which half-decent radar can identify are just a few of the major flaws that will expose its vulnerability during air combat. So it was a nice idea, poor execution. Over in China, they have the new J-31 fighter aircraft. It's faster than the F-35, stealthier than the J-20. According to experts, the performance of China's J-31 fighter jet in the future can be comparable to that of a typical fourth-generation carrier-based fighter F-35C of the United States, and J-31's fighter speed of super-fast Mach 1.8 is even more advantageous. So we may spend far more money on military than Russia and China, but we're not getting the bang for our buck. And in all modern warfare, the country that runs out of money first is the country that loses. Okay, turning to the domestic politics, the Democratic convention has started. It's being run mostly virtual, mostly remote. Michelle Obama made the keynote address, urging people to vote for Joe Biden. It's the first ever virtual party event. And apparently, Republican 2016 candidate John Kasich is pleading with his party to dump Trump. Meanwhile, Barack Obama privately is expressing doubts about Joe Biden's ability to either win the campaign or even if he wins to fulfill the office of the presidency. Barack Obama is sharing doubts about the ability of his former Vice President Joe Biden to win the 2020 election. Tensions linger between the camps, with the VP determined to prove the naysayers wrong after Obama backed former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton as his successor in 2016. While the former president has publicly backed Biden, albeit late in the game, he is said to be warning his inner circle he may not be fit for office. CNN poll shows the Biden lead is dropping. Trump is gaining. I heard Trump was sort of crowing about that on a phone interview to Fox earlier today. Biden's support among GOP-leaning voters is halved. Now, Chris Wallace has unloaded on the Biden campaign for avoiding interviews. It's something that you don't do when you're campaigning for office, is avoid being interviewed. The more press, the better. Even bad press is better than no press at all. But apparently Biden's handlers are so concerned about he's going to make another verbal faux pas that they're basically holding him in isolation. Chris Wallace called it the darndest thing he'd ever seen. Calls it the basement strategy campaign. I mean, it's almost a joke that the Democrats are running this guy. They had so many other people there who were more electable, and this is what they put up there. Anyway. Now, the White House and the Trump campaign have officially gone forward and stated Kamala Harris is eligible to serve as the vice president. They're putting paid to that story that was circulating around that because her parents were not born in the United States, that Kamala Harris was ineligible to serve as vice president under the natural born rule. Well, the natural born rule never said that about parents. It simply said you had to be a citizen of the United States of America, born in the United States of America. That is the legal definition of a natural born citizen. The parentage has got nothing to do with it. Somebody put the story out there to try and say that Trump was trying to bring back another birther nonsense, and the White House and the Trump campaign have basically said it's a non-story. The corporate media was out there pushing it, and it's time to let that one go away. And absolutely, I mean, I don't like Kamala Harris. The thought that she could potentially be president of the United States scares the heck out of me. But rules are rules, and the rules say she was born in Oakland. She qualifies under the natural born citizen rule. So let's talk about the U.S. Postal Service, because this is getting really, really insane out there. There are claims, rumors, if you will, that Donald Trump is locking mailboxes in Burbank, actually all across the country. And the left has started claiming President Trump is trying to steal the election by maintaining the system that was already in place. In other words, by saying, let's have the elections like we've been having the elections all along. Oh, that's cheating. That's cheating if you don't let us change it so that we can stuff the ballot boxes. And they're saying he's locking mailboxes so people can't vote. Now, here's where it gets a little bit weird. A group of far-left protesters showed up at Postmaster General Louis DeJoy's D.C. home to protest against casting their votes in person at a voting booth. Now, I can't think of anything more un-American than that, than to get out there and say, we don't want to vote at a voting booth. I mean, that's how absurd this is. And they're telegraphing the fact that they're planning on using the vote by mail system to try and steal the election. And look how hard they're working to try and force this through here. Anyway, as you're probably already aware, this last week, Donald Trump's younger brother, Robert, suffered an accident and passed away. And I personally know what it's like to unexpectedly lose a younger sibling. It's kind of rough to go through here. So, you know, our thoughts and sympathies are extended to the White House at this particular time. But the Washington Post used the headline about Robert Trump's death to knock the president, and just once again showed its bias. One of the things that is really disgusting is there's a hashtag wrong Trump trending. And talk about cold-hearted, no sympathy, just mean, vicious mentality that is taking over the left. You know, when they do things like that, you sit there and you think, you know, I don't want to be like those people. I don't want to be that cold and that bitter and that vicious. They're not admirable people over there on the left. They don't seem to understand that in order to win over the country, they have to win over the country. They have to make themselves look like something that we want to be. And just dressing up in the latest fashion trend isn't going to do it. If anything, that kind of works against them anyways. Well, all right, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these few words. And welcome back to our show here. And a friendly reminder that both Republic Broadcasting Network and WhatReallyHappened.com are in the middle of a perpetual fundraiser, if you will, because we need your help to stay on the air and do what we're doing. We don't have any large corporate angels giving us heaps of money and then directing us to deceive you. So we rely on our advertising budget, and we rely on donations from listeners like you so that we can keep doing what we're doing here. So again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. All right. Now, last week we were reporting on how InfoWars journalist Millie Weaver was arrested and charged with alleged robbery, tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and domestic violence after police officers, apparently from a local SWAT team, showed up Friday morning at her home and took her to jail in Ravenna. Now, the interesting thing is there's a woman claiming to be Weaver's mother said that there'd been a family dispute over a $50 cell phone all the way back in April 25th, but she'd almost immediately dropped all charges against Weaver and expressed shock that her daughter had been arrested. Now the report is there's a secret indictment of some kind against Millie Weaver. All of this is rather obviously timed around the release of Shadowgate, a documentary that purports to expose the operational role of the shadow government behind the scenes carrying out the coup against President Trump. Now, following her arrest, both Facebook and YouTube deleted the documentary, but fortunately it's on Vimeo, and we have that link on the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com. So you can go watch the documentary there. But apparently in the George Orwell tradition, discussion of WikiLeaks or any, quote, hacked information, end quote, is banned under the new YouTube rules. YouTube announced yesterday a host of new measures it says it aimed are preventing any interference in the upcoming presidential elections. Chief among the list it wrote on its blog is removing content that contains hacked information, the disclosure of which may interfere with democratic processes such as elections and censuses. And as an example it gives would be deleting videos that contained hacked information about a political candidate. Well, I'm sorry, but I mean, that's basically saying that all you're going to get from YouTube is the official campaign commercials from both sides. And we know that there's things about the candidates that we, the people, need to know, we, the people, have a right to know, that aren't going to be in those commercials. And so YouTube, once again, is acting as a gatekeeper to try and protect the status quo. Just absolutely disgusting here. All right, so let's talk about what's going on over at the investigation into Russiagate. Apparently, you know, everybody's talking about how Klein Smith has pled guilty to altering one of the messages coming from the CIA to Operation Crossfire Hurricane. And the corporate media is trying to make it look like Klein Smith is some kind of a low-level lawyer and he's a minor thing and there's no big deal, there's no there. No, he was the key lawyer that was put in charge of making sure that it was okay to go after Carter Page. And he went on over to the CIA and said, is Carter Page working for you? And the CIA said, yes, he's working for us, and his contacts with Russians are in line with what we're asking him to do. Well, obviously that would have invalidated the request for the FISA warrant for the wiretap. So what Carter Page did was he changed that letter from the CIA and basically said that, yeah, there we go. Basically said, no, he's not working for the CIA. It's a small little change, but it's quite damning. And apparently, former FBI Director Comey's in trouble because he knew Carter Page worked for the CIA, but signed the bogus FISA warrants anyway. Now, according to Representative Devin Nunes, Biden knew about the spying on the Trump campaign coming out of the Obama White House. So this is really starting to unravel right now, just in time for the campaign. Now, only a week after former CIA Director John Brennan was saying that he was cleared of any wrongdoing or having to testify. Apparently, John Durham will interview CIA Director John Brennan this coming Friday. All right. Meanwhile, a Mueller aide named Weissman is urging Department of Justice attorneys not to help on the investigations. He's deriding the Klein-Smith plea while actually calling on Justice Department attorneys to refuse to help on ongoing investigations that could implicate aspects of his own prior work. They're starting to panic, and that's a good thing. Panicked people make dumb mistakes. Now, here's an interesting little development. Early on in his campaign, a lot of people were talking to Donald Trump about Edward Snowden. And Snowden, Trump said Snowden was a traitor, deserved to be killed and everything. Now, Trump has had a rethink on that, and he's openly talking about pardoning Edward Snowden. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. Let's talk about COVID-19. And it's starting to get a little bit close to home. We actually had a friend of ours was thought to have COVID-19. It turned out to be food poisoning over the weekend. So it's getting a little personal out there. Apparently down in New Zealand, in a move right out of 1984, they've announced they will put all COVID-19 patients into mandatory quarantine camps. The Prime Minister of New Zealand has said that each and every activity will be monitored in those camps. Those that refuse to be tested will be forced to stay in the camps for a longer duration. That's getting a little intense down there. Okay. Now, COVID-19 is the third, or more likely the fourth worst flu pandemic in U.S. history, but the first flu to ravage the economy thanks to faulty models, junk science, and Dr. Fauci. And I think a lot of people would probably agree the reaction, or should we say the overreaction to the COVID-19 has caused a lot of damage to our country. Of course, my theory is the economy was ready to implode anyway. COVID-19 just makes a handy scapegoat. All right, we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines here, and we're going to start with Kevin in West Virginia. Hello, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mr. Mike. It's been a very long time since I've called in and spoke to you, and I have to agree with you, the last statement that you made, this pandemic, whatever you want to call it, the lockdown and responses as everything has actually destroyed things like we said it was going to. I remember, back in January, I had called in and told you this is never going to end. And I continue to put that out there, that this is never going to end of their plan. See, and I don't know on where your analysis has landed you, or where you're at, but I'm thinking that this November you're going to see your Democratic states that are still trying to go along with this COVID shutdown are going to be your same blue states that are going to try to succeed. And you heard me right. They are going to try succession. And after this, whenever, see, these blue states, the goal is they want to contest the election in November, which they're going to do. They want to then succeed. They want to then succeed from the United States and have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, running their part of their thing. They're then going to appeal to the military. See, a lot of people think the military won't remove Trump. I hate to tell you, but your high-level brass is nothing but your yes men. I think we're in serious trouble. Because they're going to steal it, and they came out and said, if we steal it, if Donald Trump says, hey, no, this is wrong, he's a dictator. If you don't let us steal it, you're a dictator. Do you see how all of this is now played out?
Yes, I can see how that's all coming down.
I mean, we're in serious trouble, and I don't know what to do. And I hate to turn my back and say, hey, we have an option. One of the options is don't vote, but your absent vote is going to go towards Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We all know this. So I guess my ultimate question that I'm asking is, what do we do? It's time to not be silent anymore. For us, alarming the alarm bells, like what you're doing, I think it's great, but I think it's time for action now.
Well, in the nonviolent category, I would say we need to get out there and vote so that our vote registrations aren't available for chicanery. And we need to basically oppose this whole massive vote by mail campaigns that we're seeing in places like Nevada, where they're mailing out a ballot to everybody who's in the state, regardless of whether they're going to go to a voting poll or not. We need to look at all these areas where they're talking about just setting out collection bins where people can drop off ballots. I mean, basically, it's an invitation for ballot stuffing.
Sure, and I got to ask this for you too. I actually have a Maryland address. I actually live in the state of Maryland. My parents live over here in West Virginia, and I'm with my parents a lot. Well, they mailed me a mail-in ballot. Do you remember me telling you, Mr. Mike, that I'm blind? I can't see. They didn't even send me a braille ballot. How am I supposed to fill this out, myself? I can't see it, but thank God my mom and dad helped me. But I wonder if my vote's going to be changed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
How am I going to have? I mean, I've copied everything. I took snapshots of my ballot after that. I, marked my little ballot, which was, kind of a weird little ballot thing. But I took pictures of it and get changed. That no, I voted not a straight Republican ticket, but pretty much a Republican ticket. But that's one of the questions that I had is, what about people like me? I can't see, and here they're giving somebody who can't see a cited ballot, didn't even take into consideration that I need a braille ballot. So there it goes to show you that how big this is going to be, how crazy this is actually going to be.
They're not even trying to hide the fraud. We're going to wind up like Belarus with rioting in the streets.
Well, I mean, I can see, you know what? This kind of feels like the wind up to the Weimar Republic, don't it? I mean,
yes, it does.
I'm concerned. I mean, you say a global reset. Yeah, I could see that, but I also see a devaluation of the currency. I see China, all of these countries devaluing their currency, and hopefully the dollar bill lands on top after all of these. I guess you could call it currency wars. But like I said, you shut the first world down. Now you got people starving all over the third world. And now you got this, this isn't going to end. We're not going to have a vaccine until, the mid or whenever it is. And then you have Fauci and Dr. Scarf, whatever her name is, coming out and saying that, and Bill Gates, coming out, hey, this is never going to end. Wear your mask, wear your Bill Gates burqa. Hey, everybody, I got something to tell you. Take your mask off and live how you used to live. It's okay. You can do it. I'll stand with you. I'll stand in the gap with you. Take your mask off, stop being a slave, and let's get back to the United States that we had back around Christmas. We can do this, Mr. Mike. All we have to do is say no. That's all we got to do. And thank you for your time, sir. I hope you have a great and wonderful day, and I hope Miss Claire has you guys. I hope you guys are having an awesome time. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much for the phone call. And yeah, I mean, there are all these studies out there saying these masks aren't working, especially the homemade ones. They're really useless. And I've noticed around here, despite renewed pressure to put on masks and social distance, people just aren't listening anymore. They're burned out on all of this stuff. In fact, I'm looking at this article right here out of visionlaunch.com. More than a dozen credible medical studies prove face masks do not work even in hospitals. Schools in China are now prohibiting students from wearing masks while exercising because it was killing them. It was depriving them of oxygen. At least 3 children died during PE classes, 2 of them while running on the school's track while wearing a mask. And a 26-year-old man suffered a collapsed lung after running 2.5 miles while wearing a mask. Okay, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. So let's talk about the protests and riots that we already have in this country. And I think it's just a foretaste of what we may see if this November's election is as obviously rigged as it appears it's going to be. Apparently in Seattle, ongoing anti-police protest descended into a riot yet again yesterday as demonstrators set off a large explosion near a police car, sending at least 1 Seattle police officer to the hospital with injuries. Over in Chicago, you may think that these protesters are, members of the black community, but apparently the Chicago looters were a mix of college students, out-of-work parents, and convicted felons, not neighborhood activists. Everybody sees a riot going going, they all hop on in and say, oh, you know, it's looting. Let's go down and have some fun. I have a story to share with you. During the Rodney King riots, and I lived in North Hollywood at the time, and we were watching the riots, you know, remotely on TV and whatnot. And I happened to catch the manager of our apartment building coming back in, carrying a whole case of vodka. And he just offered me one. He'd gone down there to South Central. He'd helped loot a liquor store and brought it all back home with him. And it wasn't like he lived in South Central. We lived in a pretty decent neighborhood, actually. So looters and rioters who caused an estimated $60 million in damages to Chicago's downtown were not activists protesting a shooting in the city's Englewood neighborhood, despite Chicago Black Lives Matter protests last week that condoned and even encouraged the unrest and begged Chicago police to release more than 100 people, calling them political prisoners. They're just opportunists here. 49 people shot in the last 72 hours in New York as the city hits its expiration date, pardon me. The gentrified New York City that made the Big Apple the envy of billionaires, oligarchs, child molesters, and money laundering criminals from around the world is no more. And in its place is the hellish New York from the 1970s. According to Gothamist, between Thursday and Saturday, 49 people were shot in the largest city in the United States as the uptick in gun violence continues this summer and is rushing to catch up with that other progressive paradise, Chicago. Apparently, bulletproof vest sales are skyrocketing in parts of New York City. Fed up with a litany of shootings and spikes in crime in the city since the mayor's cries to defund the police, citizens are now starting to take matters into their own hands. One Midtown dealer says that sales of body armor are up 80% over 2019 due to the ongoing unrest. Okay. Now, over in Great Britain, there is this case of Julian Assange, extradition, and it is fraught with delay. And apparently there were bizarre scenes at Westminster Magistrates Court as the extradition process of WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange was again delayed. Proceedings were held up so Assange could converse for the first time in 5 months with his legal team. The prosecution team failed to turn up at the hearing. They were told events started at 3:30. Only 5 members of the press were allowed to enter the courtroom to monitor proceedings. Other journalists, observers, and NGOs attempting to listen via telephone could not, as they were given the number to another courtroom. One journalist who did make it inside claimed the judge, Vanessa Baratzer, was clearly reading from a pre-written ruling. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here to Brian, who's somewhere in Oklahoma. Hello, Brian. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, my gosh. I'm going to pull over right now. I'm a truck driver. It's so great to talk to you. I really admire you. You know, way back years and years and years ago, I learned about 911 primarily through your website, whatreallyhappened.com. And what an honor to speak with you now. I just wanted to tell you that there's this fellow on YouTube called, his YouTube channel, his last name is Van Schaik. V-A-N space S-C-H-A-I-K, and he's an expert at determining if people lied or not. And he did a big show on Bob Lazar, and this guy's pretty merciless. And he concluded that Bob Lazar is totally telling the truth. And so I just wanted to let you know that and see what you thought about that. He got most of the information from a Joe Rogan interview, and I'm wondering, and Lazar also said that if we could ever really figure out that technology, we would have like a full spectrum weapon. So if we ever did go to war with China, God forbid, maybe that would help us win. But anyway, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, first of all, I want to get back on to 9/11 because I've already noticed all over the so-called educational channels that they're getting ready to ramp up yet another round of propaganda pieces to resell the official story to the American people. And I think, if anything, it's an indicator that they're not sure they've succeeded, because it's a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort to spend to reinforce the myth of Flight 93 and the rest of the 9/11 mythology as well. Meanwhile, of course, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth continue to do great work moving forward on that. As far as Bob Lazar is concerned, one of the things you need to understand about any form of lie detection is if the person who's lying has convinced themselves of the truth of what they're saying, it's very hard to detect that they're lying. And so I don't consider this really the proof that Bob Lazar is really onto anything. And I'll tell you, the main reason I think that is because we've never seen a significant qualitative leap in technology where everything that comes along, you can look at it and you can see its forebears in the technology evolution of the Earth. There hasn't been a giant leap forward where something just showed up out of nowhere. For example, the day after the Wright brothers flew, somebody shows up with a 747. That's the kind of technological leap forward where you say, well, there had to be an outside influence. And we haven't seen anything like that happen here. Now, as far as an ultimate weapon to use against China, if that's in the offing, I think we've already got enough weapons. And frankly, I would be very happy not to see any more, especially from an extraterrestrial source.
Okay. All right, well, just one other thing, and then I'll let you go. And I wanted to let you know I bought one of your mugs on your website the other day, and next month I will donate to RBN. And,
well, thank you.
And I just want to say, you've mentioned that you're an atheist, and I can really tell you're a very compassionate man, and the idea of war just pains you so much, and that's actually a very spiritual quality. And I believe in God, but I'm not your regular Christian. I follow Yogananda, and I believe in reincarnation. I do believe in Jesus, but God lets us live many, many lifetimes, and we gradually start figuring it out and come back to God. But anyway, it might make sense if you read Autobiography of a Yogi. It might make sense to you because you have so much scientific aptitude. But anyway, my dear friend, I appreciate you so much. I'll listen again tomorrow, and thank you. Bye-bye now.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Drive carefully, and we're going to switch over to Joe in Nome. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
I've been talking about Patriots for 9/11 Truth at the city council meetings and stuff. And I was up there last night on their website, and they're linking the Building 7 video over to your site, but when it goes to your site, it doesn't come up. It says the page is missing. Are you aware that you can't see that on your website anymore?
Well, no, I'm not aware of that. I'll double check it, but it may be that they've got a bad link at their site, and I can't do a thing about that. But yes, now that we're coming up on 9/11, I'm going to go through all those pages and make sure all the links are still working.
Yeah. I have a copy of myself. It actually shows the explosions in the windows.
Yes.
And I can forward that to you if you need me to. Anyway.
That would help, but if you could send me the actual link that gets to a page not found, that would help me track down where the problem might be, if it is at my end. Part of the problem I'm dealing with right now is SiteGround, once again, has gone through a major change of configuration. And in a lot of ways, I'm locked out from my own website. We got to take a break now for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Mike, I just have been helping my daughter pack, but so I don't know if you've covered this or not, but that there was one of the Alex Jones InfoWars reporters who put out a documentary on,
yes,
was arrested with a sealed, indictment and all that kind of stuff, and they said burglary. It's completely ginned up crap. And she was about to release, and as a matter of fact, did release, I think I sent it to you, a documentary that connects all these contractors, intelligence contractors, which make up at least 70% of the whole intelligence community, and they can outsource, and it's deniability, and and it's almost impossible to track. And all the guys like Brennan, who's running several of these big ones, other people like the head of MI6, the head of GCHQ in Britain, Mossad people, all these people are running these things. There's like interlocking directorates. It's really, really earth-shaking. And here this woman is plucked out of her home. She's like a soccer mom. And they say it's, domestic abuse, which is a laugh when you look at her, and burglary, which is also a laugh. But there's nothing laughable about them. It's this intelligence community, and this guy Brennan, who I remember having a big argument with my brother 10 years ago when I said to him that Brennan is the American Heinrich Himmler.
Yes.
The guy, he does assassinations. He's tapping everybody's secret prisons, torture. It turns out that he then bugged his own Senate Oversight Committee. I mean, there's nothing this guy won't do. Murder for hire, you name it, this guy's into it. And the whole intelligence community, and they're absolutely unapologetic, in your face, killing what's left of even a semblance of democracy in the United States. And what was your impression of that stuff, Mike?
Well, first of all, there's a woman who's come forward claiming to be Millie Weaver's mother, saying that all of this came out of an incident last April involving a $50 cell phone, and that all charges were dropped. And so it came as a shock that Millie got arrested last Friday. There is supposedly a sealed indictment of some kind. Nobody knows what's in there. Now, as of my last understanding, Millie has been released on her own recognizance, and Facebook and YouTube have taken the video documentary down. It's still up at Vimeo as of the last time I checked.
It's worth watching, everybody. It's important.
I would agree.
And it's
Make
really
local
important.
copies.
Sorry?
Make local copies. Make your own copy. Because if they can get it off of Facebook and YouTube, they'll get it off of Vimeo.
Mike, listen, well.
Peter, can you stay on the line?
I sure can.
All right, stay on the line. We're going to put you on hold. We're going to come right back to you after station identification. And welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And during the commercial break, I verified that Shadowgate by Millie Weaver is still available for viewing at Vimeo, and I have punched that link up to the very top of the main page at whatreallyhappened.com. So definitely take a look at it, find out what's causing all the fuss, and if you're able to, make a local copy, because my guess is it will not be up at Vimeo for all that long. Getting back to Peter in Los Angeles, if you could just sort of pick up where you left off.
Well, Mike, this is a lot of the stuff that's on the tape. If you've seen, I'm sure, didn't come as a surprise to you, and it didn't come as a surprise to me. But some of it did, as much as I'm plugged into this stuff. The fact that there are these interlocking directorates of all these contractors that, like, Brennan himself was involved with, and other guys as well. The head of Clapper and the former head of the NSA. And Mike, it just, when you put all this stuff together, and you think, well, bugging the presidential elections and bugging even the primaries for Bernie Sanders, and it's bugging their oversight committee.
Yes.
Julian Assange and how he's in, prison for nothing now for years for just telling the truth. All the whistleblowers. The only person who went to jail for the torture was the guy who was the whistleblower. The head of the CIA was one of the torturers. She got promoted. I mean,
yes,
it's just, and there's so many centers of corruption here, and they link Epstein and the Bronfman sex thing, the banks, the intelligence, the Clinton Foundation, the drug smuggling. We are so riven with How can there possibly be any hope for the people here when such powerful institutions have no oversight whatsoever, like the banks, like the Federal Reserve, like the intelligence community? How are we ever going to survive in the long term, really? You know?
Well, I think the pendulum swings both ways, and I think it's starting to swing back the other way. And we're probably going to see the emergence of an ultra-conservative law and order society, just like we saw in the backlash to the gangs of the Roaring '20s. Once prohibition was ended, things kind of went back the other direction for a while, and I think that's going to happen here. I don't see us staying in this condition for much longer simply because it's unsustainable.
One of the things that was disturbing, and by the way, Mike, on Friday, I saw some stuff that linked Justice Roberts with Epstein.
Yeah.
Did you? I sent that to you, but Justice Roberts has been linked with Epstein, and it's just, there's just what's left. I don't know how we're. I mean, one of the other things they were saying was that they're using this software to pick jury pools. That the software which knows everything about your background. It can pick everything that's been grabbed out of the ether world, right, for your emails and your Facebook and everything else, and knows everything about you, and they use that software to pick jury pools. So whatever, they're picking from a bunch of people who have the same, will give you the same result.
Yes.
And it's unbelievable how completely corrupt and controlled we are. And the one thing that I will say is, it looks like with this arrested, this soccer mom, soccer mom looking a reporter for InfoWars, and the trumped up charges with the secret indictments and all this stuff. They appear to be scared. They can't afford to have Trump win.
No.
With Trump knowing what they did to him, in 2016 and since. They can't afford to have him win, Mike.
Nope.
So anyways, we're in bad shape. But that's it for me. It's important for people that. Could you repeat that one more time to guys? I just want to make sure everybody sees that. That's really big stuff.
I'm sorry. Repeat what to the
link to that Shadow Wars thing.
Oh, it's right. It's the Vimeo video is right at the top of whatreallyhappened.com. I just pushed it up there. If you go to whatreallyhappened.com, it's right now. It's the first article.
God bless you, Michael.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Keith Rogers. Hello, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, kind of the same thing there, Michael. This kind of deals with, by the way, that video is still hosted at RBN also.
Okay, good.
Anyway, yeah, I got John to put that up there tonight. But anyway, I was sent an article earlier about private contractors are part of a kill chain in the Empire's Forever African War, and it was off an anti-Empire website, but also MSN carries a story too. But anyway, it's an older story. But it goes through this into where you talked about before about all this space junk and stuff that's floating around up there. But this was to deal with an awarded contract, of which is Palowich. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name there. But they go on talking about the 350 satellites that were considered critical and ones that are over what they would call a enemy's territory, like China or something like that, But But what was interesting about this entire thing here was the fact that they said that 95% of the international communications of the Department of Defense are transmitted over commercial transponders. And this gets right back into that video again, where everything can be intercepted again.
Yes.
So I just thought that was kind of interesting, though. But that was an article off the spaceview.com there. But it was actually, it's all about America's dirty war in Africa, which is basically Somalia. And I know that the U.S. does do drone flights out of there allegedly for protecting the elephants and stuff for poachers and stuff. But
Sure.
that story though, yeah. But that story links to this other one here, to where the contractors are part of this kill chain. It talks about the U.S. soldiers that have been killed over there, as well as these massive amount of military contractors that are operating on the ground over there, and they're all privatized. And this is what the U.S. does, and it's kind of like what we've seen with the CIA throughout their operations throughout the world here, is they go into a certain area, they either run their death squads and stuff, they start friction, and then they pull out and they let the people kill each other.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there. Anyway, have a good day, Mike. Good to hear you back, okay?
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And, yeah, a lot of U.S. intervention consists of going on into a country, destabilizing it, and then basically bailing on out and letting the country tear itself apart. And hopefully, though, more and more countries are beginning to realize that's what's going on, and they won't fall for that anymore. So we'll see. Anyway, let's talk about the economic news here. Everyone's now talking about subprime auto loans. And apparently American households are now carrying $1.34 trillion in auto loans on an asset that depreciates. And it's depreciating faster, in a lot of cases, it's depreciating faster than the debt. And it's one of the things Claire and I were noticing when we were looking at car commercials the other day is, the prices are very low because nobody's able to buy, but they're trying to make it more attractive by extending the car loans out longer and longer, like to 7 or 8 years. The cars don't last that long, and that's a real problem. Your average car, your average regular, middle-class car is designed to last for 5 years. And then your higher-end cars are designed to last 8 years, the idea being that after 5 years, they're sold and traded in, and that gives them 3 years on the used car market. Planned obsolescence here. But now they're starting to extend the loans on these middle-class 5-year cars out to 7 and 8 years, which means when the car is falling apart, you still owe money on it. So America's literally driving itself into debt. U.S. households now carry $134 trillion in automotive debt. What's troubling about this is the amount of driving taking place has plunged courtesy of COVID-19, and much of our economy is built around driving. People take the morning and evening commute. That was seen as simply normal. But with many working from home, that may not be the case. Also, the notion of buying cars, which is a depreciating asset, every few years is just a bad financial move. The buying would not be so bad, but the level of debt being taken on to finance a car purchase is. Not too long ago, a 3 or 4 year term on an auto loan was standard. Now we have loans of 6 to 7 years. You also have billions of dollars going to subprime borrowers. And in this climate, a large number of Americans are financially on the edge. You can't run a country on debt. Not forever. You absolutely can't. EasyJet is cutting up to 670 jobs as it closes Stansted, Southend, and Newcastle bases, while Jet2 acts as 102 pilots in a fresh kick in the teeth for the air industry. Okay. There's a report out here. This is coming from yourdestinationnow.com. The rich and famous are leaving Hollywood in droves over unrest and taxes. New York City has lost all their population gain for the last 7 years. People are finally waking up. We're seeing those progressive liberal urban centers are being abandoned, and people are returning to the rural heartlands. Flyover country may be the country not too long from now. And once again, Claire and I were ahead of the trend. And let's talk about the postal voting. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has summoned House members to return to Washington this week to address what Democratic leadership is calling Postal Service sabotage, a conspiracy theory that Donald Trump is interfering with normal operations at the U.S. Postal Service to hinder the agency's ability to handle mail-in voting. Well, basically, and by the way, notice they're not going to talk about coronavirus relief, which they never came up with a deal on that. But they're going to talk about the postal voting here. And what's going on is the post office is saying they can't handle this surge. Okay? And they don't have the means to do it. And so the Democrats have basically created a situation where they've asked the post office to do something that can't be done, and then they turn around and scream that it's Donald Trump to blame for it not being possible. So they're going to be having hearings about that. They're going to get the Postmaster General to testify and try and figure out some way they can say this is Donald Trump trying to steal the election by insisting we hold the election the way we've held them before, like back in 2016, when the Democrats pretty much for the most part lost. Now, this story came out just before we went to airtime, and it's a little bit weird. I don't even know if it's enforceable. This is from westernjournal.com. And apparently California is proposing a wealth tax on people who have moved out of the state in the last 10 years. Now, this is a Democratic proposal, of course. It's an annual tax of 0.4% on the worldwide net worth of every resident in the state. And this is Assembly Bill 2088, which would create the tax on a vast list of untaxed assets California wants to tax. The tax would target not only current residents, but anyone who has what the bill classifies as wealth and has lived in California at any time in the past 10 years. It would use a sliding scale based on the number of years a taxpayer lived in the state. Supposedly, for each additional year you go backward, it decays by 10%. Now, when you add that all up for somebody who left California 10 years ago, we're talking about 2.5% of their entire wealth to be taxed retroactively. I think it's an ex post facto bill. And if I were a lawyer arguing against this, that would be the first thing I would look at. Does this qualify as ex post facto? And hence that would be unconstitutional. But again, that's Democrats for you. Don't control the spending, just tax everything. Tax it, put it in our hands, and hand it back on out and expect everybody's gratitude when we give them back half of what they had before. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, Nancy Pelosi is out there saying the House has to return to vote on funding for the United States Postal Service so they can set up this vote by mail ballot rigging for November. There's only one problem. She came on out there and said that they've got to pass the funding request because Americans rely on the Postal Service to deliver Social Security benefits and tax returns. There's just one problem. The government hasn't been sending those items by mail for over a decade. In fact, the government announced in June of 2010 that all Social Security checks would be sent via direct deposit, and people who were scheduled to receive those checks but did not have a bank account would be issued a Treasury Department Direct Express debit MasterCard onto which funds would be loaded electronically. So Pelosi is not even checking her facts before she's out there screaming, we need money for the post office. And she's trying to couch it in terms of tax refunds and Social Security because the real issue is the post office can't handle the volume of mail that's going to be generated by this vote by mail scam. And so they're desperate to keep this thing going. You've even got Dr. Fauci out there saying there's no risk going to a ballot to a polling center and voting in a voting booth. And I think the desperation of the Democrats is illustrated by that story we had earlier in the show today, where protesters showed up at the home of the Postmaster General protesting that they had to go to vote in a voting booth. I mean, when I was a kid, that was like the symbol of America's participatory democracy, was going to a polling place and voting in a voting booth. Yes, there's rigged voting machines and the rest of it we have to deal with. We don't have a decent, reliable voting system. And that, to me, is one of Donald Trump's biggest failures, because he came into office after 2016 saying that he was going to work on a commission for voting integrity, which got absolutely nowhere. None of the state voting commissions would cooperate. So he basically disbanded the commission and turned it all over to the Department of Homeland Security, which, as far as I can tell, hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot of anything to clean up our voting system. Meanwhile, if you go to whatreallyhappened.com, in the upper left, just underneath that hideously outdated picture of yours truly, there's an article on how to have an honest election system. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's certainly a lot better than what we've got right now. It certainly is. Now, there's an interesting article from Sophia Narwitz, and it appeared in Russia Today. And it talks about how victimhood has become a cult that wants you to suffer forever. And she's absolutely right. You know, victimhood is the new social status. Oh, I'm a victim. I'm a victim. Admire me. Or feel sorry for me. Do things for me. I'm a victim. And it's a trap. And it is a cult. She's absolutely right. We need more people standing up and saying, I'm not a victim. And I'm not going to be a victim. Go away and leave me alone. Okay, phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313. And by golly, we have a caller coming right in the line now. Ken in New York, hello. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Do you think maybe the post office could be in trouble because they're not only bonusing all their upper executives, which they've been doing for years, and they're giving deep discounts to eBay, Amazon, and other large mailers? I see more and more people than ever offering on eBay free mail in the lower 48 states at least.
I don't know what the arrangement is between the U.S. Post Office and eBay. I do know that, pardon me, Amazon gets a really sweet deal from them as well. I know that a lot of regular postal mail has gone away because, you know, email is faster and more reliable. But I think there's no question that the post office has been mismanaged for decades. But in this particular case, you know, this expectation that they're going to handle, you know, all these hundreds of millions of ballots being sent out and then returned, it's a surge in postal activity that the post office just was not expecting to have to deal with.
Yeah, and this, I heard a story about,
Hey,
about
Ken?
Trump.
Ken, I'm going to put
okay.
Ken, I'm going to put you on hold. I'm going to put you on hold. Don't
Okay.
hang up. We'll come right back to you. And welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Ken in New York. We're talking about the post office. And it's no secret the post office is rather badly run and things get lost and things get delayed. But we're already hearing horror stories about places where they're already trying to get the mail-in voting running, where you know, ballots are being sent out to dead people. And of course, they can be filled out and sent back in, and nobody's checking, you know, when the ballots are being counted. Is this person really this person? Is this person really alive? That's why the Democrats in 2016 were working so hard against voter ID. We can't even tell if the person filling out these mail-in ballots is a U.S. citizen. And U.S. citizens are not supposed to vote in U.S. elections. Ken?
As if that stopped anybody. Something that I read and heard that Trump was being blamed for was something to do with the sorting machines either not working or being taken offline. But I've talked to...
That was the story that was being put out there, but apparently it's already being denied.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I've talked to several letter carriers. Of course, we don't have a regular letter carrier. We used to have one that was dedicated to your area, knew every nook and cranny. And they tell me that the sorting machines basically don't work that well. They're constantly getting errors. And perhaps they're cutting down on the number of people that they might have used to correct those errors or manually watch over the machines.
Well, you know, it's like I said, the post office has got problems. There's this one sorting center in California where stuff goes in there. It can be weeks before it comes on out. I'm trying to remember the name of which one it is. It's Richmond, I think. Richmond, California. And they have a bad reputation for losing packages for weeks on end.
We actually had a situation in New Jersey, I think it was about 15 years ago, where they caught some postal employees actually just throwing the mail away. They couldn't handle the mail, so they just threw it away. And I had gotten caught up in something like that. I ended up having problems with a credit card because at that time, you know, it still wasn't, electronic banking wasn't all that big. And I ended up having a problem because of it. For example, you know, your bill always goes to some state other than your own for some reason. And in my case, I used to go down to Florida. How long have they been privately run? It seems like that when they started that's when things started to go downhill.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people still think that the United States Post Office, like the Federal Reserve, is part of the government, but it isn't. But it is rather badly run, and it has been for quite some time. And I think a lot of it has to do with they haven't really kept up with the expanding population and the expanding needs. Now, on my little system here, I have a program that prints mailing labels, and it includes the little digital barcode that at least gets the mail to the correct zip code without, having to go through those sorting machines. So it is a mess. And the fact of the matter is we've even got the Postmaster General saying that if we rely heavily on this vote by mail in November, it may be days before we get a final tally. It's going to be that bad. It's going to be that messed up.
I'd rather get on in person. I don't like the idea at all.
I agree.
We did that for the school boards, and I didn't like it at all. All right, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. All righty. Now, Barack Obama is getting ready to retire, and he's basically building a new home on the property where they used to have the house that featured in the TV show Magnum P.I. And apparently he's caught a little bit of local flack because he's using loopholes to bypass coastal protection laws. So this beachfront compound in Hawaii where President Obama plans to retire used a planning loophole to retain a seawall that is likely causing beach erosion. So once again, the rules go to everybody else, but not to the top people here. State officials and community members confirmed to ProPublica that Obama plans to reside in the compound on Oahu, which was purchased for $8.7 million by his close friend Marty Nesbitt in 2015. After tearing down the site's mansion made famous as the house from Magnum P.I., developers are building 3 homes, 2 pools, and a security perimeter on the 3-acre beachfront parcel permit show. All righty, we're going to go back to the phones here to Don in Arizona. Hello, Don. Welcome to the show. Actually, Don, we're coming up on a commercial break here, so you can get started, but I'm going to have to put you on hold.
Yeah, I used to work for the post office, Mike. I worked there many years, and postal management is not known for being very smart, and they're not nimble. We used to have certain rush periods like Christmas, and we'd get all these fruit loads. Right before Christmas, we'd get 1 million little boxes of fruit, and so, but they were ready for that. But this
okay,
is
Don.
trying to lay on it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Don, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Put you on hold. I'm going to come back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Don in Arizona, who used to work for the United States Postal Service, and we were talking about expected and unexpected surges in postal demand.
Yeah, they used to be ready for certain things. There'd be a lot of junk mail that would come in the fall that would advertise for Christmas, but now the post office now, it looks like they're just downsizing like crazy. They're not even ready to run a lot of first class mail anymore because everybody's doing it. Banks, the trend is you can do it a lot quicker just by, I tried to get a check from Fidelity, a brokerage, and it took so long. It took like a week and a half for me to get that check, and so they convinced me. So I'm just connecting it with my bank, and I can do it, and that's what everybody does. They just do things. Everything is done. First class mail is just totally obsolete. So when they're trying, and the Pelosi and the Democrats, there's nobody running the show there. Who's in charge? You mean to tell me Nancy Pelosi's in charge? No wonder everything is so totally screwed up. She's calling these people back to have a vote on whatever they're going to vote on. But so what? I mean, it won't get if they vote on something, it won't make it through the Senate, and Trump would veto it anyway. So she's just making herself look even more foolish than they already are looking foolish. And I got to believe that it's looking to me like I don't see how they have a chance. But they, I guess, if they're going to try something really big, I guess their idea was to mail a ballot to everybody in the United States. Was that their plan?
That was their plan. They've already done it in Nevada.
Okay, Okay, but if you want to do that, that's just so much mail that, and then they expect to
Then
get
it has
it
to
all
get
back
mailed
too.
back.
Right. They couldn't. Yeah, in the post office, they should have cleared that with the postal service somehow before they got coming up with this bright idea. You know, but they just said, "Well, post office has to do what we want." Yeah, they could do it, but there's no telling how long it'll take them. Believe me, I work for the post office. They're not real swift. I mean, you know, they're they can tend to screw stuff up a lot. You know, and they're downsizing. They're for the last 10 or 15 years since I retired and everything, they're doing away with a lot of their facilities. They're just not ready to handle first class because nobody's and even junk mail is going out of style now. Not
Yes.
getting junk mail like we used to either, because that's useless too. Everybody realizes that advertising does not work, you know, because nobody looks at it. They throw it right in the trash can. So I mean, basically, the only thing that's keeping them busy is Amazon. And this guy I used to work with, he said Amazon actually built a facility about a mile from there where we worked, you know, so they can just funnel the stuff right over to the post office, and like you said, they get a discount. But the post office is almost a thing of the past now. I mean, I still send letters sometimes, but most people don't send letters at all. First class mail is not. You know, so this whole thing with the ballots, I don't know how that's going to finally pan out, but and then people are protesting in front of the Postmaster General. Like you say, that's insane. I mean, how can you do that? What do they want the guy to do? They'd have to hire a whole lot of people is what they'd have to do all of a sudden
Yes.
to handle that surge. And they're not going to do that. I mean, and if they do, then these people are not qualified. They have to train them first. And
Yeah, and there's not enough time to train them.
Right. So that's the way it is on that, and yeah. But I worked for the post office, and it was good and bad. I mean, the money was good, but the rest of it was pretty bad. So I'll let you go, Mike. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And I've got an email on this very issue. For the first time in maybe 7 to 10 years as an overseas voter, I didn't receive my mail-in ballot for the Washington state primaries August 2nd on time. I was warned back in early summer the United States had withdrawn from the International Postal Union, and there might be a problem with mailing out ballots. I managed to vote on time anyway with some advice from my county auditor's office. As I understand it, the Postmaster General doesn't really answer to the president, but to some post office board of directors. My ballot wasn't delayed because of some conspiracy, but because the U.S. pulled out of the IPU long prior to the last state election. Washington State has an e-ballot system where you can vote, print out your voted ballot, and send it in by fax or email. There seems to be a fairly good system in place using barcodes and so on that a mailed blank ballot is decertified once you choose the e-ballot option. In both cases, mail-in and e-ballot send back, there is a paper trail. All right, we're going to go back to the phones to Miles in Maine. Hello, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. You know, I was just thinking when it comes to these ballots, too. You know, these postal people, they don't have any type of training for anything like that. Even when you send official documents like that, I mean, you have to send them return receipt and stuff like that to make sure that they were there. And, you know, this is just another instance where there's just not going to be any safeguards. It's a very fragile implementation. It's just a patchwork implementation for a problem that doesn't happen. And I got to say, it was interesting to see Fauci come out and say, you know, everybody can go to the polls and vote. So I don't see any reasoning for it now at this point, since Fauci's been the god behind everything we do now. I don't see any reason that we can't go, even, you know, since we have him in our good graces anointing us to be able to go to the polls.
Well,
here's
a question I have for all these mail-in ballots like in Nevada. Okay, what happens if I, as a voter, I get a mail-in ballot, but I'm planning on voting in person, and I throw my ballot in the trash, and somebody comes along harvesting these ballots from the trash bins to fill them out and send them in? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How, you know, this email said there's a system where a blank ballot is decertified once they choose the e-ballot option. But I don't see that they have that in Nevada, and I don't see that they have that in most of the states that are going along with this mail-in ballot. You've got all these excess ballots floating around and no way of double checking them. I mean, to try and compare every single mail ballot with an in-person ballot or an e-ballot or an absentee ballot, I mean, the amount of compute power required to do that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. And, that was for the primary or whatever, but this process should be halted immediately. I mean, it should just be immediately stopped right now and tell everybody, if you're going to vote, you're going to the polls. And honestly, they need to have ID at the polls, and regulations in place such as that. Like you've mentioned several times, Trump had a long time to get this elections commission straight, and he didn't. But my other issue, Michael, that I wanted to mention was, I call this the Corona economy. And I'm just wondering, after we received that threat, back years ago in the Obama administration from Paulson, are we seeing Paulson's threat? I mean, is this the economy? Because if you recall, he had mentioned there'd be riots, there'd be unrest and all this. I mean, this sounds like when he was, trying to frighten the House into voting for the bailout.
Yeah.
I've thought about this as well. Just prior to this, all those billionaires, those world billionaires got together for some unknown reason. I mean, it's not like they were part of the G8 or it's something like that, some economic summit. They kind of held their own little get-together. And it wasn't long after that till we started learning about coronavirus. And the other comment I wanted to make is there were some congressmen, I believe it was, or maybe senators, that had switched stocks around and things like this just on the heels of this. Have you heard anything further on that? Has there been any investigation of that? Have any of those congressmen, been penalized in any way, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Boy, oh boy, you don't hear a word about them anymore.
Just seems to go away, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's here for 15 seconds and then it's gone, unless it's Black Lives Matter, Antifa, or the police done something wrong or something like that. It just doesn't seem like we can get any answers to anything. But, Michael, thank you very much for your time. Keep up the great show.
All right, thank you very much. Here, we're going to switch over to Steve in Nevada. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Biden reminds me of the guy that goes to a psychiatrist, and he's, Doc, he says, I got a problem. He says, I can't remember what anybody says to me from 1 minute to the next. The psychiatrist says, well, how long you had this problem? He says, what problem?
Yeah. Old joke. But, the good news is that if Biden wins the presidency, he'll be able to hide his own eggs for the Easter egg hunt at the White House.
Anyway, I went to college some 50 years ago when I was taking a course in political science. And this guy says, it don't really matter to the everyday individual who's the president and who's not. And when I look back, it really hasn't mattered. I mean, I went to work every day, and and now I'm on Social Security and a little old retirement I got from when I was on the LAPD. But anyway, I live in a little town just north of Vegas, and I was wondering if they still give that free course through you at the front sight shooting range.
I don't know if that's still in effect or not. Mike in the control room, do you have any information on that? Okay, I guess not. I'll tell you what, I'll make a point of asking about that, and I'll do an announcement later on.
Okay, I was an instructor out there, and it's pretty nice. It's about probably 50 miles north of Vegas, and they're really sharp. And I was surprised, though, like 95% of the people that came out there were pretty good marksmen. It was, and they come out with Batman utility belt, and by God, you know, and all this. And it was kind of funny, but so anyway, yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there. But we got to be the laughing stock of the whole world. We really do. I look at Hillary get up there, and I watch the reruns of the presidential debates with Trump. Honest to God, man, I'm sorry. She just makes me want to throw up. I mean, I can be laying there in bed and hear her voice, and I don't know. But anyway, I was wondering if you ever thought about writing an autobiography. Honest to God, I have never listened to anybody so fascinating and done so many things in their life than you.
Well, I've never thought about writing an autobiography, but, you know, I am working on a couple of books. One is The Blueprint for the New America in my copious amounts of free time, and I'm also trying to work on a novel. And, but again, because of the hours it takes to prep for this show and to do the show and everything, I'm not making a lot of progress on them. But who knows, somewhere down the road, I'll get a block of time and I'll be able to finish these off. But an autobiography, nah, nobody'd be interested, I don't think. I'm not even interested.
I'd be the first one to buy your book. I really would.
Well, that's one.
Well, you got at least Tom and...
Long way to go to be a bestseller.
And Al in Canada. So you got 5 or 6 will be on... Anyway, yeah. So I guess I'm in Nevada, and they got this mail-in thing, and I don't know. You know, I was all pumped up, 4 years ago, I guess now, and going to a caucus. I remember reading about it at school. But there we were lined up, and, you know, they went to different rooms, and even the guy was standing there as well. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here, but we're supposed to be discussing, you know, this and that. He said, well, the hell with it, you know, we'll just go on to vote. But so that's what we did. But I don't know. I don't even know what I did with the ballots. They're around there somewhere. But I just, you know, and then this whole virus thing. I was watching on TV where a guy stabbed somebody, a 70-something-year-old man, because he wasn't wearing a face mask outside. And then the cops pulled him over, and he got out with 2 knives and a screwdriver, and they wound up shooting him. And then it makes me really sick is the guy, the little kid, 5 years old, rides across his front lawn or something, and he just comes over and executes him. People are going crazy. It's really crazy. I mean, we fled California. We fled California, and about 25 years ago, and you know, I got a year's worth of food and a hand pump on my well in case the electricity goes out, and you know, I got enough Chef Boyardee to last 6 months, so I'm good to go. But I don't see a nuclear war. I really don't. I hope cooler heads prevail.
Well, I hope you're right.
I really do, and I'm glad you got out of Hawaii, because, boy, that'd be one of the first places they dropped it on. So how's the weather there in Indiana? It's hot and muggy here.
Well, it's actually quite nice here today.
We got bought a swamp cooler about 6 or 7 years ago, and, boy, my electric bill dropped in half. You know? It doesn't work too good on muggy days like this, but you know, I'll tough it out a little bit, turn on a couple more fans. But so anyway, yeah,
beautiful day here today in Indiana. Now they're predicting thunder showers tomorrow, for whatever that's worth. But right now it's a very nice day. You know, nice day to go out for a walk.
Well, take Claire out for a little walk, and you know,
definitely.
Anyway, have a good one, Mike, and keep up the good work.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. And in response to the question that you had before, the front side deal is still on, and you can call Dan Sutterfield at area code 573-465-2356. One more time, that's area code 573-465-2356. We're going to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our show after these few words. Join us on the air. And welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. And this is a little bit of a whoopsie. Apparently, Iran has gone public saying that the fuel in those 4 tankers was not actually Iranian. The ships and the flag were not Iranian. And basically what it is these 4 tankers showed up in Iran, bought the oil FOB, which means once it was on board the tankers, it was no longer the property of Iran. It was the property of a still unspecified third party, who was then sailing it across through the Caribbean at the point of seizure. And so Iran is describing the United States as the pirates of the Caribbean. But according to the semi-official ISNA news agency, Oil Minister Bijan Nabdan Zangana said the oil had been sold to customers and the payment was received for it. So the U.S. is claiming it seized Iranian petrol, but even though the cargo was sent from Iran, neither the ships nor the petrol were Iranian. So there's a little bit of an embarrassment there. Okay, now, pardon me. Experts believe that Neptune and Uranus are primarily composed of water, while NASA proposes a mission to Neptune's moon, Triton, which could have an ocean capable of supporting life. Researchers believe Neptune and Uranus are composed primarily of a strange form of water. I have a comment here. Okay, and I know they've launched the new rover to Mars to look for life. But frankly, if you want to find something that's truly extraterrestrial, I think you need to go back to Titan and see if there's anything crawling around in those methane pools. And I know we're being somewhat species chauvinistic, looking for life as we know it. But apparently they're starting to believe that a lot of the gas giant planets and their moons are actually water worlds with a crust of ice over them. Scientists have developed a computer model to examine thermal and electric processes occurring at physical conditions on the giant ice planets. In the model, the researchers looked at the conduction of electricity and the heat of water under extreme temperature and pressure conditions with implications for both planets. Well, good. I'm glad they're going on out there. But, you know, having been an alumni, if you will, of the Viking missions, I'd like to get some confirmation or a final refutation that what we discovered back in 1976 was microbial activity. And I'm sure that Dr. Levin would agree with me on that one. Absolutely. Okay, let's see. Yes, Democrats do want to take our guns away, and Kamala Harris admits she will violate the Constitution to do it. It should be noted, as Breitbart News reported, Harris never really has discussed the details about how she would use executive authority as president to get assault weapons off the streets and out of our hands. But based on the Constitution, which plainly states the right to be armed shall not be infringed, it seems pretty clear whatever she would try wouldn't be legal. But still she would try. She has said so. But Kamala Harris' choice creates the most anti-gun presidential ticket in history, because Joe Biden's calling for firearms confiscation in the draft Democratic Party platform, Rented Lips. The 2020 Democratic ticket was already shaping up to be the most anti-Second Amendment in history. With Biden's or his team of able-minded handlers' choice of Senator Kamala Harris for the vice presidential slot, the Biden campaign and the Democratic Party have cemented this ignominious distinction. Now, considering how poorly the politicians treat you now, just imagine how bad it's going to be if they actually succeeded in disarming the American people. There's the music. We got to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. We'll be back tomorrow. Please spread the word of RBN and whatreallyhappened.com. Please, 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 please donate. Thank you very much to those who already have, and Aloha America.